Thank you. And we will now move on to the next item of business, which is First Minister's questions. And at question number 1, I call Douglas Ross.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And I remind the Chamber that my wife is a serving officer with Police Scotland. As part of a pilot in the north east of Scotland, frontline officers have been told to no longer investigate certain crimes. SNP funding cuts are forcing dedicated officers to ignore criminal acts. Some victims of crime will report it to the police, only to be told it's not important enough to investigate. So will the First Minister tell us which crimes won't be investigated?
First Minister.
First of all, Presiding Officer, of course, Police Scotland's funding is not being cut. I'm pleased to say that despite UK Government austerity and recognition of the crucial role that police officers play, of course, we've just announced this week an excellent pay offer that I'm pleased that police officers have accepted, and the service is receiving an additional £80 million in resource funding in 23-24. Again, from the North East pilot that Douglas Ross mentions, let me quote directly from the news release that the police put out in that region. It says, on some occasions, crimes are reported where there's no associated threat, no risk, no harm, no vulnerability, and this is the important bit, also no proportionate lines of inquiry for local police officers to investigate. When this happens, our staff will inform the caller that the inquiry has been recorded and a crime reference number will be supplied, but no further action will be taken. That, to me, seems like a proportionate approach to tackling crime, Presiding Officer.
Douglas Ross.
So the First Minister is quite happy about that. That is incredible. Now, first of all, more pay for our officers is welcome. Fewer officers is not. And that's what we have now in Scotland. And the First Minister cannot dodge responsibility. This is a result of SNP funding cuts, and it's laid clear in the letter that he's just read out from Chief Superintendent Graham Mackey. But this pilot is unfairly treating communities in the North East as guinea pigs. They'll receive a poorer service despite paying their taxes like everyone else. In response to this, the Scottish Police Federation Chair David Threadgold said areas could be at increased risk as criminals target places where they know crime won't be investigated. Now, Humza Yousaf wouldn't let this rash experiment happen in Glasgow, so why is he content to let victims in the North East go without justice?
First Minister.
That is complete and utter nonsense, turning one community in Scotland against another community in Scotland. What else would you expect? What else would you expect from the divisive Conservatives? This, of course, is a policing operational matter. Let me pull up Douglas Ross on a couple of points. First and foremost, Scotland has more police officers per capita than England and Wales. And, of course, on significantly higher pay here in Scotland because we believe in paying our police officers fairly. In Scotland, we have 30 officers per 10,000 of the population in Scotland. That compares to 25 in England and indeed in Wales. Let me go back to the central point. What people in Scotland, whether they're in Glasgow or the North East, care about is ensuring that recorded crime is at low levels. And I'm pleased to say under this SNP government, recorded crime continues to be at one of the lowest levels ever since 1974, down 42% since 2006-2007.
Douglas Ross.
North East families shouldn't be paying the price for SNP funding cuts, and that is what is happening here. The Scottish Police Federation said this pilot could set a dangerous precedent. Officers are warning that this could be a slippery slope unless Humza Yousaf steps in with more funding. And even today, Audrey Nicholl, the SNP, MSP and convener of this Parliament's Justice Committee, has raised concerns about what is happening in the North East of Scotland. So will the First Minister tell us, is he going to act on these concerns, or is he going to let this happen across the country?
First Minister.
If Douglas Ross does not correct the record after the session, then he is frankly happy to be inaccurate and misleading. Because let me read again the facts. We are investing £1.45 billion in policing in 23-24, increasing the resource budget, increasing by 6.3%, an additional £80 million. So any suggestion that we're cutting funding, I'm afraid, is simply untrue. Let me go back to the North East Police, the press release that was sent out by the police in the North East, because this is an operational matter. Again, if crimes are reported and there's no associated threat, risk, harm or vulnerability and no proportionate lines of inquiry, then of course officers will give a crime reference number, the crime will be recorded, but no further action will be taken. So on this side of the chamber, Presiding Officer, we are ensuring our police are funded, we're ensuring there's more police officers on the street, but crucially we're ensuring that recorded crime remains at one of the lowest levels in 42 years.
Douglas Ross.
I think if anyone's going to be correcting the record, it's the First Minister, because of course we know that the Police Scotland's budgeted officer establishment has reduced from 17,234 to 16,600. There are less police officers on the beat in Scotland, and they are being told not to investigate crimes. And why are they being told? It's because of funding. And if the First Minister won't believe what I'm saying, maybe he'll listen to Deputy Chief Constable Fiona Thompson. She said the force is facing hard choices. She continued, the levels of service we provide to the public will inevitably reduce. First Minister, this is a direct consequence of SNP funding cuts. Officers don't have the resources to do their jobs. People who report crimes will be told tough luck, and it's open season for criminals under the SNP. So why is the First Minister telling offenders that they can break the law and get away with it here in Scotland?
First Minister.
Douglas Ross, with that question, demonstrates why he should never, ever be allowed to be First Minister of this country. Panicking people, alarming people, sensationalism, all for cheap political headlines, Presiding Officer, is what Douglas Ross is interested in. What we're interested in, Presiding Officer, is results. Those results see more police officers in Scotland than other parts of the UK per head. What we see is further investment in our police in comparison to the previous year. What we also see is lower recorded crime rates here in Scotland than when we took
Let's
office.
hear the First
What
Minister.
I would say to Douglas Ross is when he talks about difficult public finances, they're difficult because of Westminster austerity, because of cuts to our budget, because of austerity. Because of course, the disastrous mini-budget that Douglas Ross, just under a year ago, demanded the Scottish Government follow Liz Truss's path. And now he wants to see tax cuts for the wealthiest. So we'll continue to invest in our public services. And let me just say, when it comes to the public finances, Douglas Ross has no credibility whatsoever.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.